Hey everyone, we're gonna be watching is Gen Atlas a sci-fi show of the Colossus. If you don't know what it is, it's just you
What
have to
if
see it
you
for
were the
yourself. So we're
Colossus
gonna do
and
this.
also a robot?
You probably know
We
what it
just
is
got to
though, but
see
if you
Gen
don't,
Atlas
then
behind
just
closed doors, an
listen.
extended trailer, and we got to talk to the creator, Fumito Ueda. Simon and I are here at Summer Game Fest.
Uh
I
huh.
just want to get your top level thoughts as someone who loves his work. He's
Yeah.
loved Shadow of the Colossus, Eco, Last Guardian. How do you feel about Gen Atlas now that we saw a little bit more of it?
I am excited. Like you said, like on some days, maybe Shadow Colossus is my favorite game ever. So like to get to
That
talk
looks
to
really
him was
cool,
just
bro.
alone exciting. But to see even more of Gen Atlas, I'm even more excited for the game because that first trailer, it gave us some things. It gave us, the giant creatures you'd expect from a Ueda game, right? That sense of scale. You can already tell without
I
knowing
love
really
that.
what
I
it's
love
about. There's
that
going to be that
helmet,
sense
bro.
of
It's really
pathos,
cool.
that sense of like human connection at the core of the game. But we got to see more of maybe what you'll be doing in the game. And it does seem like this one will be a little more combat heavy than maybe we expect from one of his games. He did speak to us and said, if Eco was a game that kind of was rooted in not really having combat, Shadow of the Colossus swung one way to the other side of that and was kind of combat led, but albeit with a sword, there was no guns. Last Guardian, again, went away from combat and he's kind of swung the pendulum back the other way here with Gen Atlas. There's guns, which we've never had in a UA game before, and it's a sci-fi game, which we've never had from Ueda before. Normally,
I
rooted in
remember the
fantasy. This
Colossus on
time,
PS2
we're
with
exploring a sci-fi world.
the
Albeit, I
giant
think with
animal
similar
or
themes,
whatever
he
the
didn't
hell
want to
that
go too
was.
deep
Of course.
into what the game is. He doesn't ever really explain what his games are about.
Unless
Right?
they're
I don't
talking
know.
about the other
Good
one with
artists
the,
don't
with
really
the
tell you what
giants.
their
I don't
games
really
are about.
remember.
But
I don't know
yeah,
too
what
much
do
of the
what did you
Colossus.
think
That's why I
of
was like, yeah,
it
listen
being
in so we
sci-fi
can
and not fantasy? Is
find
that a
out
welcome
together.
shift
Honestly.
for you?
Yeah. I think he's done fantasy style games like Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Last
Yeah,
Guardian.
this is
There's
what I'm
like
talking
there's a
about. This
through
right
line
here.
there.
That
There's
right
some
there. That
similarities there, and he
animal.
explores similar themes.
That's what I was talking
but does
about
them in
with the
new ways,
kid.
right? And I actually I asked him about that. Like, what is it about moving to sci-fi that opens up new ideas for you? And he was honestly like, it's gonna be a similar game in that sense. But he was talking about like some of the more minute details about how he can do storytelling now that it's in a sci-fi world. And I'm
Gen
thinking about
Atlas,
what you were
okay.
saying about like guns and combat in the game. It's like, is that the kind of game that he's making? And my impression is that this is something that is purposeful. It's gonna have a message behind it, and like not to blow smoke for a game that we haven't like got hands on with, but I think he's very thoughtful with his games. Like there's direct intent with the things that he's doing, and he talked about how scale is one of the points that he tries to get across with his games, and I think you asked about that as well. Like, what is it about these huge, larger than life figures that works for your games? Like, is it something that you're just impressed by? And when I thought about my experiences with those games, and it's like, yes, to feel small, to conquer something bigger, but also to have a message that isn't directly told to you.
Yes.
That's what makes his game stand out. And I don't doubt that that is the case with Gen Atlas, but moving to a sci-fi theme, like I feel like we're going to explore similar themes but in different ways and in a modern context where technology is kind of having a huge impact on our world. I don't want to put pressure on him because I did ask him like, do you feel pressure
I
all
just
the time?
realized
Like,
that the
if you work on a game, is it
helmet's
supposed
right
to be,
behind
like,
him too when they're
life-changing for
talking.
somebody? And he's like, hey, I just make what I make, and
I
hopefully
just
it
noticed
connects with
that.
people. The expectations are there for that, but also
Mhm.
from what we saw in the trailer and some of the more moment-to-moment things there, it's like, yeah, it's kind of the game you expect from a Ueda, but exploring a few new mechanics to maybe make that extra step, or to actually at least differentiate itself. Like, those are the things I'm looking for. You can do a similar game again with a little twist, and I'm kind of here for it.
Well, I think a
I
big
hear
change with
that
this one
guy.
might be the fact that it doesn't seem like you're only playing as the human character. In his other games, you've been, the David to the Goliath, whether you're taking down or working with these giant creatures. In this one, it seems you're also controlling the giant robots
Right,
at
yeah.
points, or parts of them. Like, we've seen a flying head. I asked him, like, what was kind of, the inception of this game? What was the spark that started it all? And he said, the short answer is giant robots. He
Yep.
just wanted to make giant robots.
Sometimes giant robots is kind of all you need.
Exactly. Everyone loves the Iron Giant.
Yeah,
Yeah. He said he
I do
grew up
like the
watching
Iron
a lot
Giant.
of
That was a
like
good
kaiju
movie.
cinema. He's always been, in awe of like giant creatures, machines, and you can see that in his work quite evidently. But also the longer answer to that question is he had this image that he couldn't get out of his mind of a giant robot holding its head underneath its arm, and he just wanted that image to be in the game. It seems like maybe, I don't know, I'm completely theorizing at this point, that maybe it's almost going to work like the inverse of Shadow of the Colossus, where in that game you go around and have to kill all these giant creatures. I have the feeling we're going around this world and we're almost putting them back together. We're almost fixing them, like getting their head back on their body and kind of almost bringing this world back to life. If I had to guess at this point, that is what this game is going to be about.
And you can see like the
reconnecting
helmet
us
right
to the
behind
world
him.
and technology
You probably
in a
see
way
it
that
already,
is
but you know,
beneficial to us without it
I'll point it
maybe
out next
destroying
time
our
when
soul.
they show themselves.
And so, like, I asked him a little bit about, do you go into these games with the intent of sending a message, or do you want to say something broader about human life and human creation? And, if you played his games, he doesn't say anything specifically or explicitly in those games, but there is still, like, an emotional core, and I think he
right
has
here,
this
see it?
understanding of, like, what
It's
resonates with people without having
giant-ass
to say
robot.
it. Shows it
Well,
visually,
just
and
the
shows it by
head.
the things you have to do.
Yeah,
Like,
you
when,
see
in
in the
Shadow of the
game.
Colossus, when, like, climbing is such a interesting experience.
Yeah,
You don't
that's what I
think
was
of
talking
it
about, these things
as
right here.
"quote unquote" fun gameplay element, but there's something about it that
I played
communicates to
number
the player,
2
like,
a
you don't
long
have to
time
say it.
ago.
You're doing the thing,
On,
and you're
on
kind
the
of in awe of
PS2
what you're
system.
seeing, the spectacle of it all, and the consequences of those actions.
Says it with no words, basically, right? No, I assume, again, we've barely seen anything from this game, but from what I can tell, there's going to be no vocal communication. There's not going to use a human language per se. But I see Fumito Ueda's name, and I'm instantly excited. And I've seen nothing to take that excitement away yet.
Yeah, same. And you asked him about Last Guardian and the difference between Last Guardian and Gen Atlas. And he straight up, the only thing he said was like, whatever happened with Last Guardian, I'll never want to go through that again. And that's an interesting answer. And it kind of changes the way you approach games and probably like the rate at which he's able to work on games. Because speaking about the communication thing, like one of the things he said is that there's always a sense of isolation in his games. And like, I think
The animal was
those
like
games
hurt, I
wield
saw like
it in a
blood
very
on it or
powerful way.
whatever.
He mentioned that the character you're controlling and the robot you're kind of working with, there's a little bit more communication there. So I think that something as small, they might not think that that's a big deal, but something as small as that can open up new storytelling opportunities. And it's interesting that he's shared that specifically. So
Yeah.
there is surprisingly a lot of action.
Evil
I think the
Dead
extended
Burn,
trailer
huh?
that we were shown,
You're making in there Evil
showed
Dead.
like, I don't know, if you play Gears, there's like a Hammer of Dawn type thing where you're like summoning like a solar beam from the sky or something, and like it's just like there's a lot more going on with this, I think, while still hitting the touchstones that people recognize in this game. If you put this side by side with his other games, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is probably from the same creators. We get these kinds of games so infrequently, so when there's a lot of similarity between the different games that he's worked on, I think that's a really interesting thing. Like someone's got to do it, right? And others have tried, to do like games that don't say as much but try to hit you with revelations and the actions that you take. But the scale at which Ueda usually works on it just hit different. So those are the touchstones that we care about. And that's the reason why when we saw the trailer at the showcase and when we saw the extended one here at Summer Game Fest, I think it's hitting those notes, but it's gonna be a little while till we see it.
I can't wait another 10 years though. I can't do that. I know The Last Guardian took a while. I can't wait. That's been 10 years. I can't wait. Like, hopefully in the next couple of years, few years, we get to play this. Epic are publishing this one. It's going to be on all platforms, whereas, all his games were in Sony exclusives in the past. So that's kind of a big deal. And yeah, I just, like you said, 10 years. I did ask him, like, I was more intrigued than anything. Like, what games in the last 10 years have you been enjoying? Not necessarily what inspired Gen Atlas, but gave two answers. One surprising, one not surprising. The first one, he said humanity enhanced his game, which you can kind of see why he'd be into that. And he said he'd also been really enjoying Power Wash Simulator. So there you go. Fumito Ueda is a big Power Wash Simulator fan. There we go.
So y'all heard it here first. Fumito Ueda is a big fan of Power Wash Simulator, and we got a lot more stories coming out of Summer Game Fest. So for all that, what's happening in games, stick with IGN.
All right, let me know your guys' thought on this. Like I was talking about before, like the animal or whatever in the Colossus had like blood on it or whatever. You probably saw it, but I like the attention to detail for the game. It looks really cool, everything like that. I don't think it's that far back. Yeah, right here. See, there's blood right there on the animal. I don't know what you call it, but I never finished the Colossus, but it was really fun and it was different. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, and if you want my stories, in the description. I'll see you all next time, though. Bye, everyone.